Let's talk about Italy. Its story with silver coins starts way back. We're talking about the Roman Republic. Before they were a massive empire, they needed a way to pay soldiers and trade. So, around 211 BC, they came up with a coin that would change the world. It was called the denarius. This wasn't just money. It was a symbol of Roman power, and it was almost pure silver. It was the dollar of its day, and everyone wanted it. The denarius was a workhorse. A Roman soldier got paid in these coins. He could buy food, wine, or maybe a new piece for his armor. The government used them to fund massive building projects like aqueducts and roads. Think about that for a second. The very roads the legions marched on were paid for with these little silver discs. The designs on them were also brilliant propaganda. You'd see portraits of emperors, gods, or images of military victories. It was like carrying a tiny billboard for the Roman Empire right in your pocket. It told everyone, from a farmer in Gaul to a merchant in Egypt, who was in charge. What's really fascinating is how the denarius tells a story of boom and bust. In the early days, under the Republic and early Empire, the denarius was about 95% silver. It was solid. But as emperors got greedy or the empire's finances got shaky, they started messing with the formula. They'd mix in less silver and more cheap metal, like copper. This is called debasement. By the 3rd century AD, some denarii had less than 5% silver. People weren't stupid. They knew they were getting ripped off. This led to massive inflation. It's a classic lesson in economics, and it's written right there in the metal. So when you see a Roman denarius, you're not just looking at old money. You're looking at the tool that paid for an empire's expansion. You're seeing the face of an emperor who ruled a quarter of the world's population. And you're holding evidence of one of the greatest economic collapses in history. For a pawn shop guy like me, that's not just a coin, that's a time machine. It's a piece of history you can hold in your hand. I've seen thousands of them, and every single one has a story. You just have to know what you're looking for. After the Roman Empire fell, things got chaotic in Italy for a while. The lights went out, so to speak. Coinage became a mess. You had all these different kingdoms and tribes making their own crude coins. But then, something amazing happened. Italy's cities started to get rich from trade. We're talking about places like Venice, Florence, and Milan. They became the economic powerhouses of the Middle Ages. And with great power comes the need for great money. They needed a reliable silver coin that merchants from all over Europe and the Middle East would trust. This is where the story gets really good. Enter the Venetian Grosso. Around the year 1200, Venice introduced this big, beautiful silver coin. It was a game changer. It was larger and had a much higher silver content than most other coins circulating at the time. Its design was iconic and stayed the same for centuries. On one side, you had the Doge, the leader of Venice, receiving a banner from St. Mark, the city's patron saint. On the other, you had Christ sitting on a throne. This coin screamed stability and trust. A merchant in Constantinople knew a Venetian Grosso was good money. It helped Venice dominate trade in the Mediterranean. But Venice wasn't the only player. Other cities saw what was happening and wanted in on the action. Florence, another banking and trade giant, introduced its own silver coin, the Grosso Guelfo. Milan, Genoa, Naples. They all started minting their own high-quality silver coins. It was like a competition. Each city used its coins to flex its economic muscle. The designs reflected their local pride, featuring patron saints, city shields, and rulers. This wasn't just money anymore. It was a declaration of identity and independence on the world stage. These coins fueled the early Renaissance. Think about it. All that incredible art and architecture from that period, it had to be paid for. The Medici family in Florence, who were bankers, didn't pay Michelangelo in seashells. They used florins, which were gold, but they also dealt heavily in high-quality silver coins for everyday business. These coins were the grease in the wheels of the European economy. When you handle a coin from this era, you're touching the very thing that financed the Crusades, built majestic cathedrals, and paid for the spices that traveled the Silk Road. That's some serious history. As we move into the Renaissance, things get even more interesting. Coin-making technology got a big upgrade. Instead of just hammering a piece of silver between two dies, they started developing presses. This meant coins could be made more uniform, more detailed, and much harder to counterfeit. The artistry on these coins is just incredible. You start to see lifelike portraits of dukes and popes. These rulers weren't just putting their symbols on coins. They were putting their actual faces on them, looking powerful and sophisticated. It was the ultimate status symbol, broadcast to the entire world through the money in people's pockets. This is also the period where we see the ancestor of modern Italian money, the lira. The name lira comes from the Latin word libra, which means pound, because its value was originally based on a pound of silver. Venice introduced a silver coin called the lira tron in 1472, and it's considered one of the first lira coins in Italy. It featured a stunning portrait of Doge Niccolo Tron, which was a big deal at the time. Most Venetian coins focused on religious or symbolic figures, not a realistic portrait of the current ruler. People were shocked, but it set a trend. Another famous coin from this time is the testone, which means head coin, because it featured a big, prominent portrait of the ruler. The Dukes of Milan were famous for their beautiful silver testoni. These coins were like miniature sculptures. The level of detail in the hair, the armor, the expression on the face, it was a world away from the simple designs of the Middle Ages. These coins weren't just for buying bread. They were collector's items even back then. They showed off the wealth and artistic sophistication of the Italian courts to all of Europe. It was branding, pure and simple. So, from the 15th to the 18th century, Italy was a patchwork of kingdoms and duchies, each with its own silver currency. You had the Papal States minting coins with the Pope's coat of arms, the Kingdom of Naples with Spanish kings, and Savoy with its own dynastic currency. It was a complex and fascinating numismatic landscape. Collecting coins from this period is like putting together a puzzle of Italian history. Each coin represents a different power player in a very high-stakes game. And let me tell you, when one of these rare silver pieces comes into the shop, my heart beats a little faster. Jumping ahead, let's talk about modern Italy. In 1861, Italy finally became a unified country. One of the first things the new kingdom did was create a single national currency, the Italian lira. This was a huge step. No more Venetian ducats or Neapolitan piastras. Now, everyone from the Alps to Sicily used the same money. The first silver lira coins of the unified kingdom of Italy featured King Vittorio Emanuele II. It was a powerful symbol of a new national identity. These coins were well made, with high silver content, projecting an image of a strong, modern European nation. For over a century, the lira was the soundtrack to Italian life. But, like many currencies, it had its ups and downs. After 2 world wars, the value of the lira took a nosedive. The silver coins disappeared from circulation because the metal in them became worth more than their face value. This happens all the time. People hoard them, and they vanish. The government switched to making coins from cheaper metals like aluminum and stainless steel. The days of silver as everyday money were over. The lira became famous for having a lot of zeros, with people carrying around thousands of lira just to buy a coffee. Then came the biggest change in modern European history. On January 1st, 2002, Italy, along with 11 other countries, said goodbye to its national currency and adopted the euro. It was the end of an era. The lira, a currency with roots stretching back to the Renaissance, was gone. I remember the transition. People had to trade in mountains of old lira notes and coins for the new euros. It was a massive logistical challenge, but it also closed a major chapter in Italian numismatic history. The silver coins of the past became purely historical artifacts. Today, on this Christmas Eve of 2025, the coins in an Italian's pocket are euros. They have a standard European side and a unique Italian side, featuring famous art like Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. But the story of silver is not forgotten. These old coins, the Roman denarius, the Venetian grosso, the Renaissance testone, and the silver lira are more than just collectibles. They are tangible links to some of the most important moments in Western civilization. They tell a story of empire, faith, art, and commerce. And that, my friend, is a story that will always be worth a lot. You never know what's going to come through that door.